we go, brownies. Here we go. Here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, this for my dogs from the east to the west side. You rockin' brown and orange with me, baby. Let's ride. Represent the land, let them know. Tell them, here we go, brownies. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the Here We Go Brownies podcast. I'm Allie Heisong, coming at you live from Sneads Ferry, North Carolina, and joined with me, as always, out in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio. We've got Dustin. Dustin, how you doing?
Beautiful downtown Cleveland, Ohio.
Ooh, downtown Cleveland, Ohio.
Right in the heart of downtown Cleveland. Allie, you know what I've learned? I am going to be spoiled now because of the theater district here in Cleveland and the amazing shows that they get. Only second to New York, as you know, when it comes to all the theater here. But I was told once it leaves New York, Cleveland is the first city that gets a lot of these Hamilton and types of places. I think I'm going to be spoiled. I'm going to be like, this is amazing. This is normal, when it's really not, that Cleveland has this amazing theater district. I'm assuming you've been to some of these wonderful performances up here in your lifetime. So
I have. I mean, it's been quite a while since I've been in the area enough to where I can, make use of that and the resources available there in Cleveland. But you're right. That is one thing that I think a lot of Clevelanders and local Northeast Ohio people are spoiled on. I've only been to a handful of them, so I can't say much. But you're right. There's not very many other places really in the United States that have that. So you're lucky.
Right.
Are you gonna do something this week? What do you got?
I'm gonna go to the Cavs game tomorrow night because
Yeah.
that's
Cool.
only 7 minutes from doorstep to doorstep. So I'm gonna take in.
Yeah, not
They're
bad.
taking on the Magic, I think, tomorrow night, the Orlando Magic. So
Cool.
that'll be a fun game to go to. But no, I've looked at it. They got a show called The Funny Girl, some other things that are coming. So I'm going to do that at some point. And what else was I gonna say? Oh, and of course you been in Cleveland. You did a little shopping this
I
week.
did. I did. I flew into Cleveland, I think Thursday of last week, and immediately drove down to Columbus, so I wasn't there very long. Went wedding dress shopping, so that was a lot of fun. Spent some time with the family and came back yesterday. So I am absolutely beat. And I will tell you right off the top, Dustin and I talked before the show. We both have like really bad headaches tonight, so we said we're gonna do our best. We're gonna do our best. So apologies if this isn't up
It'll
to
be
our,
good. It'll be good.
but
It'll be good.
you know what? We'll be fine. We'll bring David on here in a little bit. He'll revive us with the medical moment.
Maybe
bring us
he
back
can
to life.
maybe he can diagnose this. No, just kidding.
Well, he just brought me a tea
Oh, that's good.
to get me through. So we appreciate him for that. But Dustin, not a ton to talk about, and that's not always necessarily a bad thing at this time in the
No.
postseason. So we can have a little bit of fun on the show tonight. We're going to start doing some of our fun draft segments where we will talk about the draft or we'll draft something. But
Right.
we're going to continue on with our position breakdowns tonight. We're going to do the tight ends. So a little bit more of that to come here in just a little bit. Guys, we want to kick things off with our friends over at Angelo's Pizza. If you're wondering what you should have for dinner, the answer for you is Angelo's Pizza. So be sure to head on over to Lakewood to get your hands on the best pizza in Northeast Ohio. And they do it right at Angelo's. They start out with a buttery crust and they do double layer toppings. It's great in the restaurant, at home, and even just as great the following day. So be sure to head on over to Angelo's today. And you know what? While you're in the area, Dustin, I'm sure you can attest to this. We want to talk about our friends over at K&D Property Group, because whether it is sophisticated suburban living, luxury downtown digs, or senior housing, K&D, the largest property management company in Northeast Ohio, has the perfect home for everyone. K&D is your one-stop shop for housing in the region, with apartments and amenities for everyone, including residential, commercial, retail, and also corporate housing. So find your dream home at K&D. Visit knd.com to get started. That is the letter K, the word, and the letter D.com.
Well, as I said, I live in a K&D property, and they are wonderful
Yes, you do.
people. And I got to tell you, they have amazing properties down here. The Hannah, the building I am, the residence at 55, multiple buildings in the downtown Cleveland area. But it's just a beautiful building that I live in. Obviously, the Halley, but no, it's pretty cool, Alley, to take in downtown Cleveland. Real quick question though, dress shopping. I know
I did.
that's not an easy task. Were you
No.
successful?
Yes, I was. I did come away with, I did say yes
Oh,
to the dress.
oh, that's good then.
Um,
Okay, because I
it
know
was
that can be tough. Yeah.
it was stressful. It was a
Oh
lot. It
yeah.
was overwhelming. I am
Yeah.
completely drained, but
Mentally
it
and
was fun.
physically.
Yes, because it's emotional. I'm there
Of
with my
course.
family, and it's
Yeah.
emotional. But no,
And
it
ho-
was it was a lot of fun.
and hopefully you're only doing this once in your life, right? That's
Only
the
doing
whole.
this one time, so
Right.
we're going all out. We're throwing a party. It's gonna be a
That's
good
right.
time. So yeah, it's I'm trying to keep up. Trying to keep up. A little tired today.
Good. That's all right. We're good. We got this.
So, Dustin, let's talk about the elephant in the room right now. There's a lot of speculation running around on social media about our good friend Nick Chubb and his future as a Cleveland Brown. Look, a couple of weeks ago, we had a running back podcast where we discussed
Yeah.
the state of the running back room. We handed out grades. We did all of that fun stuff. So I want to talk about this a little bit because, there's a lot of speculation right now on the future of Nick Chubb and could he be a cap casualty? I mean, to put it bluntly, I mean, the answer is yes. Like, it could happen, right? Like, that is something that could potentially happen. Dustin, do you think it's going to happen? I say absolutely not. No way.
Yeah.
It's not going to
Okay.
happen.
Okay.
I Go ahead. Go with it.
Yeah, so it's clickbait. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm going to call it, and everybody falls into it. And thank God we don't on this podcast because it's just ridiculous. It just gets a bunch of fans riled up. And here's things at this point, maybe I wouldn't have said this about the Browns 5, 6, 7 years ago, but this is a smart organization now. They know what they're doing. And I guess what I'm trying to say is you don't bring Nick Chubb out on Thursday Night Football to smash a guitar. You
Yeah.
don't talk
Twice, by the
about,
way.
yeah, you don't put him in. You don't have Andrew Berry going out there and talking um, great lengths of how great he is, how much of a player the coach is. You just don't do that from an organization and then say, oh, and by the way, we're so sorry he's gone. You will have a revolution among the fans. I mean, it's just to do that and then turn around and do that. It's nonsense. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't look. It's not a good look. And it's like we were talking about, he's doing a public signing, which by the way is rare. He does not do a lot of these, and he isn't. He's doing that in 2 weeks, and I don't think he goes and puts himself out there in that type of situation if he knows he's not coming back as a Cleveland Brown, right at the end
Yeah.
of the day. Because I can tell you this, I know I've gotten to know some of these Browns players and stuff like that, and they are cautious and they do pump the brakes. And we know this, Allie. We've had some of our former friends on this, and they've told me no to interviews until guess what was done. Certain things with the Browns, I's were dotted, T's were crossed before they would go out there. Because guess what their agents would tell them? No, you're not going to go do that, right? You're not going to go make any public appearances until we get this all figured out. It's a smart thing to do, right? So
Mhm.
again, I think this is a lot of clickbait. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people love to do this. It gets a bunch of us already crazy fans riled up for no ass reason. Okay, I'm going to use the word ass because that's what it is. It's asinine. Sorry. And it's just dumb. It's just dumb. I'm sorry. I'm going but it's the truth though. It's absolutely
Yeah.
the truth.
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't think it's going to happen. I mean, we look at the volume of, of runs under Kevin Stefanski over, especially this past year. I mean, they were top 3 in the league, and how many times they ran the ball. Now, were they effective in doing it? No, like we've talked about that. But I think it's in their best interest to maintain Nick Chubb. I think that they need to do everything in their power to do so. You talk about optics, Dustin. I mean, they made it really difficult for the fans when they traded for Deshaun Watson. And they said, for some of these fans, set your morals and ethics aside and deal with this. Now, if they were
Right.
to have to get rid of somebody like Nick Chubb, who is kind of the heart and soul of this team and everything you want in a Cleveland Brown, to make room for, Deshaun Watson's contract, I think that's going to even piss a lot more people off, and rightfully
Right.
so.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it's a really, not only is it, I think, a bad football move, but it's a really bad like PR move. So do I think it's going to happen? No, I really don't. I think that they'll do
Now,
everything in their power to maintain him. But is it a possibility? Yes, it is.
well, I think it's going to be more of a restructure at the end of the day,
Sure.
right? They're going to, and Alan, tell me what you think about this. I could see the Browns coming back and saying, "Hey, Chubb, we got to make some room here. what happens if we delay your contract a little bit here and lay in some incentive bonuses? Like you get over 1,000 yards in a season and put some really good things in there that he probably thinks he could achieve and make it worthwhile for him. I think that's more of what will probably happen with this contract. Put some incentives in it. What do you think, Oliver? That's just kind of where my mind goes with something
Yeah,
if
I
they
agree
restructure.
with that. And it's hard to, and we'll ask David this in a second, to know, where Nick Chubb is going to even be health wise. Because it's entirely possible. And I mean, I know David's talked about this. We talked about this really last week, or maybe it was the week before when we talked about ACLs, that statistically, it's not always in the player's favor that they're going to come back bigger, better, faster, stronger. It's that is entirely possible that he comes back after a very serious knee injury and he's not the same player. So I think that that's another thing that us fans need to prepare for. That even if they do keep him, that maybe he's not the same player. So we've talked about
Right.
this, Dustin, that it is important that they bring in another running back this offseason, whether that's via trade, via free agency, whatever. They need to make that a priority. So is it
Or the draft.
possible? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Is it possible? Yeah. But is it likely? I say no. That's just what I think.
Yeah, and here's the truth at the end of the day. Again, I'll double down on this. I think it'll be a restructured because here's the truth. Unfortunately, the Browns are going to say, "Hey, Nick, we put this contract together with you based on you being 100% healthy." So the Browns can actually say, "We have a little bit of uncertainty here, right? We don't know what the longevity of your career is going to be, but we love you. We appreciate everything you've done for the Browns. So let's make this so it's more incentive laden." And I think Nick Chubb is a super big time competitor and he'll be like, yeah, I'm going to prove my worth. I can do this. I'm not too worried about it. And I think that'll come into play if it's not this year, because you bring up a good point. He may not be back till week 4 or 5, right? We don't
Mhm.
know. That's a big question mark. So we don't know where he'll be in that recovery process. But at the end of the day, I think they'll adjust it and put stuff that kind of kicks the can down the road, which Andrew Berry's done on a lot of other contracts.
I mean, when you look at Nick Chubb, the person, aside from the player, he's everything you want, within your organization. Head down kind of guy, blue collar. And he, in my opinion, I mean, we saw it this year in how inefficient the offense was in a lot of ways. He was able to kind of really hide a lot of those issues the past couple of years. I mean, look at the offensive line this year. Now, I know that there was a lot of injuries, but even that, the quarterback, just a lot of the offensive philosophy this year, Nick Chubb was able to kind of mask some of that in years past. So I
Right.
don't know. You're right. I think some of this is just clickbait, a lot of speculation. So no idea what's going to happen, but hopefully they can figure it out.
Yeah, and again, like I said, there's a lot of other questions I think that'll be addressed that are more important than that at the end of the
Mhm.
day, because I do think Nick Chubb has a pretty, not crazy contract. I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like some of these other guys that have some big cap kind of situation. So at the end of the day, I don't know. I think it's a lot of clickbait, and unfortunately, us Browns fans and other people that they get their outlets for their news um, buy into it, unfortunately. So.
Mhm. Yeah. I agree. All right, let's go out on the medical minute, and I want to talk about Nick Chubb with Dr. David Ullery. And this, the medical moment, rather, is brought to you by our friends over at Lorella Vineyards.
Everybody, my name's Kim Lorello, and my husband and I, Larry, started Lorello Vineyards over 21 years ago. We're a small cantina nestled in the Grand River Valley in Geneva, Ohio. Our winery consists of 2 beautiful tasting rooms, and we have 2 rooms that can transform into party rooms inside. Our menu here at Lorello's is home cooking. We have wood-fired Tuscan pizzas, paninis, salads, and several appetizers. We have award-winning wines that have won medals internationally, nationally, and locally. In the summer and springtime, we have a beautiful outdoor patio that also we have live entertainment. We also have entertainment sporadically through the entire year inside during our cool fall and winter months. Additionally, outside in the summer, we have a beautiful tent that can house several guests for a private function. We hope to see you soon, and if you want any more information on Lorello Vineyards, you can go to our website at www.lorellovineyards.com. We hope to see you soon.
All right, and with that, let's go out online and bring on Dr. David Ellery to the program. And David, what's going on?
Hello, hello. Good evening, guys. How is everybody?
Good evening. How you feeling? How you living?
I feel great.
He feels
Fortunately, don't have a
better.
headache
He
like the
feels
two of
better
you.
than us.
But I'm doing my best to nurse Allie back to health, or
I'm getting
Dr.
there.
Allie back to health.
There you go. Let's get into, so first off, we were just talking about Nick Chubb. I want to talk about that a little bit. I know he's been like really a huge topic of conversation when it comes to his health and the status of his knee. Just in this point in recovery, David, where kind of does he lie? Where do you anticipate him to be in terms of his recovery process at this point?
Yeah, I know it's been a couple of weeks since we talked about that because I think last week or the week before we talked about Achilles, and so certainly we know he's off crutches and he's moving around on his own, no problem. Probably out of a brace too, and just he's right in the middle of strengthening still. I mean, it's probably getting close to starting maybe some straight line jogging or running. Just getting back to that motion, getting back to that activity in a brace probably. And then we have either you can do it on an underwater treadmill or we call it a gravitron, where it's an anti-gravity treadmill where you kind of get into like almost looks like a bodysuit or a wetsuit, like when you go surfing. And it zips into this pocket or this bubble that's on the treadmill. And then it gets, there's a button you press and it kind of turns it into this anti-gravity situation. So there's less impact. So you can still do the running motion and you're still getting kind of back into that form and that activity, but it's with much less impact. So it's easier on the knee, but it allows you to progress your rehab. And so somewhere along that line, I would imagine he's kind of going through that. And once he graduates from like the lower resistance or the lower impact treadmill, we'll get to a regular treadmill, we'll do more strengthening. And then ultimately by 6, 7, 8, probably closer to 9 months after the surgery, he'll start doing more agility work. He'll start doing jumping, side to side lateral movement, and just kind of progressing through. So right now he's probably just starting to explore running as well as continuing with strengthening and getting back to squatting 10,000 pounds like he does.
So I want to talk about Deshaun Watson as well. And I want to turn it over to you. I know the past couple of weeks we've done like a deeper dive on injuries. Like we did ACL, Achilles. Maybe tonight we can talk about the injury that Deshaun suffered. But I want to bring that up because he is anticipated to start throwing in March. Does that fall in line with, the recovery process when he got injured to where he should be now? And what could that start to look like? And then, of course, I'll turn it over to you to just give a deeper dive on the injury, the nature of the injury itself.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we recall, I do believe his injury occurred in the Ravens game on November 12th, where he did finish the game. But afterwards, they were looking at his ankle, and he said, "Hey, my shoulder hurts too." So they got imaging of his shoulder, and that's when they found that he had a glenoid fracture, an intra-articular glenoid fracture. So to kind of back things up and give a background understanding of that, the glenoid is part of the scapula. The scapula is the primary bone, and that the glenoid is kind of like this process that is off the end of it towards the outside of the body. Scapula is also the shoulder blade. And so what happens is the scapula creates this like little protrusion that's kind of like a golf tee, and that's the part of the articulation of the shoulder joint. The shoulder joint's like a really, really shallow ball and socket joint, but it's more like a golf ball and a golf tee. And so it's easy to kind of knock a ball off a tee. Similarly, a shoulder, we have a great range of motion. Get overhead, get behind our back. And so there's a lot of soft tissue restraints that kind of stabilize it. But so the glenoid itself is the golf tee or the dinner tee, and then the humerus is the ball. And he broke the glenoid somewhere across the face of it. And so it was intra-articular, meaning it was the fracture extended into the joint and affected the joint cartilage. And the reason that's so significant is because anytime you have a disruption of cartilage or an injury of cartilage, it can lead to arthritis down the road. Certainly other things can be wrong, especially in the shoulder joint. If there's any sort of step off or a big gap between the bone, it can cause instability where the shoulder starts to dislocate because that bony congruency isn't there. And then, like I said, primarily the biggest concern apart from instability is arthritis. And so, for him, it's his throwing shoulder, it's his dominant shoulder. Even if it was his non-throwing shoulder, they probably would have still done surgery for it just because it's a pretty significant injury. But the good news, like we talked about it at the time of the injury, is it's also a pretty reliable healing because it's not soft tissue. It is bone to bone. And so when bone breaks and you realign the bone and squeeze it together really tight, bone does a really good job of healing and getting back to as strong of a condition as it was even before the injury. Now, like I said, there's going to be some element of cartilage damage. And so even though the bone might heal very well, it's not going to be perfect. But as long as it's lined up perfectly and they got to it quickly, that cartilage damage should be minimized. So he had surgery on November 21st. So not 9 days after the injury, once he kind of got some second opinions and he went out to California to have the surgery. And so the way they fix it kind of depends on exactly where it was broken. If it was broken kind of on the front or across the face like this or in the back, different variations of fixing it. You can do it arthroscopically where you go in with a shoulder scope and then through small incisions put screws in to hold it together, or you can do it wide open with a big incision. My guess would be they did it arthroscopically to minimize the number of incisions and to reduce the soft tissue collateral damage during the surgery, but I don't have all those details, unfortunately. Either way, the first 6 weeks after that surgery, he's probably in a sling doing very little activity. The first 2 weeks for sure, he's not doing anything except taking a shower and then just chilling at home. And then for the next 4 weeks, they start to introduce gentle range of motion, start reestablishing his range of motion so you don't have too much stiffness. And kind of looking at a rehab protocol that I just pulled up online, if I can get to it, talking about the recovery timeline. Okay, it doesn't want to work for me right now. I don't know why. Here we go. I was using the wrong mouse. Here we go. So they kind of break it down into 3 phases. First phase is 0 to 6 weeks, like I was just alluding to. And it's really just gentle range of motion for those first 6 weeks. When you're not working in therapy, you're back in that sling, just so you're relaxing the shoulder and letting that bone heal. Phase 2 is week 6 through 12. So kind of the 1.5 to 3 month mark. And that's where we get you out of the sling. You're done with that. You're relying on the strength of your shoulder to hold it up now. And we start to do more active motion. So you can start moving it on your own and doing exercises to stretch it and pull it overhead. But we're still not doing much strengthening because the bone really just starts to heal at 6 to 8 weeks where it's really solid and you can start stressing it. And then once you get to closer to 3 months, we start doing gentle strengthening with bands, pulleys, cables, just very light exercises to start getting the strength back. And then that third phase is kind of 12 to 24 weeks and beyond, where you start to do more lifting, more strengthening. And so right now, with surgery being November 21st and today is February 21st, he's just about 3.5 months out from surgery. And so he's right in that phase where you're starting to do more strengthening, but shoulder's not quite ready for that dynamic activity of throwing a ball because there's so much that goes into it. I mean, for the scapula itself, there are 17 muscles that connect to it. I mean, it is an impressive bone, but there's so much that goes into the rehabilitation of a shoulder because even though the fracture was in the shoulder joint, the whole shoulder girdle and all of those muscles are affected too. And so the rehab takes quite a bit of time to reestablish strength and control of those muscles before you can even consider doing more of a dynamic activity like throwing. And so certainly he's been doing simulated throwing. He's been doing that motion and starting to get the feel for it. But obviously once a ball is in your hand, it's really hard to not throw it hard. And so you have to hold him back until you know that his body can control it and function appropriately. And so totally makes sense that about 4 months after surgery in March is when he'll start throwing. But I think he's right on time. And like we talked about when he first had the surgery, fully anticipate a return to full playing for week 1. Should be the starter, no problems there. And so really good outcomes with this type of fracture. It's very rare. In the general population, it's less than 1% of all fractures in general, and then maybe 3 to 5% of any sort of shoulder injury. So incredibly rare injury. And usually we see it in car accidents, really high energy mechanism where someone gets thrown around a vehicle or ejected from a car. Mm-hmm. The other way, like we saw with him, is an indirect injury where you land on an outstretched arm or on the elbow, and all that force gets driven right into the shoulder joint. And so it's just kind of the perfect combination of things where the ball was driven right into the glenoid and just caused it to crack. But like I said, really good outcomes and recoveries from this. Just, looking at one study, there's not a lot of data on this just because they're so rare. But for fixation of this, where it's likely just a couple screws, like what he got, outcomes are great. In terms of returning to an excellent outcome score, which is minimal pain, great strength and range of motion, 80 to 95% of patients get back to that. And there's very low risk of poor outcome in someone like this where there's no associated injury. In a car accident, they might have rib fractures, they might have other issues. His was purely just this broken bone. There was no nerve injury, nothing else going on. And so he should have a really good recovery, I would anticipate. And we'll see him back throwing next month. And by the time, training camp comes around, he'll be hopefully ready to start taking snaps with the first team.
With that, last week, the week before, when we talk about specifically ACLs, and we said, about Nick Chubb, even like he may not come back as the same player that he once was. Do we run the same risk with, a fracture? Could Deshaun Watson come back throwing the same? Could it be different? Or is it likely that he'll return back to the same player that he used to be?
Ultimately, I would anticipate a little bit more, I would say, optimistic or positive recovery in terms of just kind of the expectation for him versus someone like Nick Chubb. Soft tissue injuries, they have so much more consequence and they're much less forgiving than a bony injury and just a fracture. Now, that's not to say with 100% certainty that he will be. Obviously, things happen. And like I said, if there's any amount of like significant cartilage damage, that can play a role because that causes pain. Arthritis is a painful condition. It's not necessarily an unstable problem or an issue with mechanics, but it hurts. And if there's pain limiting his activity, obviously that would play a role, as his shoulder was hurting earlier in the season with that rotator cuff strain and having all that pain and difficulty throwing. And so, you can't guarantee any result. You can't guarantee any outcome.
Right.
I mean, that's just medicine. Unfortunately, things happen. But I would say if we're talking, Deshaun Watson versus Nick Chubb, far and above, Deshaun Watson has the more optimistic and positive outcome and expectation in my mind. And I think really, as long as there was no concomitant injury to the soft tissue, again, we don't know all the details. We don't know if the labrum was torn with this injury or if anything else went on. But if it was truly just a bony injury and a fracture and they get that to heal successfully without any problems, I would anticipate his throwing motion, his throwing mechanics, his throwing power and accuracy to all remain the same. I mean, there might be a small step off in the beginning just because truly there would be some rust in this situation, as we kind of, went back and forth with during the season last year. But in this situation, I think, that can be expected. But I mean, certainly by the second month of the season and definitely halfway through, I think he'll be right back to the Deshaun Watson that we at least know. Now, again, when it comes to his mental capacity and his actual confidence with the game, that's a different story. But the physical ability to throw the ball and play the football game that he does play and the style that he plays, I think he'll be more than able to do that.
Yeah.
Well, and I just have one quick question before you take off, David. And I'm assuming with someone that's under the age of 30, that's a better timeline for somebody healing, right? Compared to somebody that has a fracture like that and say they're 50 or 60 years old or whatever, they're going to have a much quicker and shorter time frame for that to heal and recover, right? Just because the body's, it's just younger and just it heals faster. So
yeah, certainly age makes surgeons look good, especially when kids are like younger than 18, because the healing potential. I mean, it's inversely proportional. The older you get, the less your healing potential is. And so someone under the age of 30 definitely has a better kind of biology to induce healing and encourage healing. And of course, again, he's going to have all of these resources at his disposal to help that as well. He'll get an X-ray at 6 weeks, or he did get an X-ray at 6 weeks to make sure everything looks okay. Another one probably at 12 weeks, and then potentially another MRI or CT scan to confirm that it's healing or that it has healed. But beyond that, they'll optimize all of his recovery and nutrition, make sure he's eating a high protein diet, make sure he's got adequate levels of vitamin D in his blood, and that he's absorbing calcium with that vitamin D and really getting the bone to heal. If he needs any sort of other injections or anything at the time of surgery, they probably would have provided that too. And so with him being not 50 or 60, his healing potential is much more higher than someone with a similar injury in a different age group.
Makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, David. First off, is that the cat that you're trying to avoid entering the camera?
Yeah,
yep.
He's
eating
the flowers.
I figured as much. He's eating the flowers that you got me. Oh no. I'm gonna have to come out there and.
I'm starting to think you guys have the most out of control animals. I'm starting to think
it's true. Yeah, that's accurate. But it's only when we get on the show or I have a call at work. Any other time they are angels. So Yeah, that's just a quick viewpoint in the Heisery household. All right, David, thanks for joining us. Thanks for making us a little bit smarter. We appreciate it. Go Browns.
Go Browns.
Go Browns.
All right, that is Dr. David Ullery, orthopedic surgeon. That's where he gets all his knowledge. So we appreciate that. Here's a quick word from our friends over at Seaside Events for what we've got going on.
There, Browns fans, pack your bags for the ultimate dog pound at sea party on the amazing Independence of the Seas in March of 2024 as we embark on a 5-day all-inclusive Caribbean cruise. Spend time with your favorite Browns alumni like Josh Cribbs, Eric Metcalf, Webster Slaughter, and many more. Presented by Seaside Events. Cabins are selling fast, so book yours now. Visit BrownsFanCruise.com or call 216-284-6472 today.
All right, there you have that. And just a quick word from our friends over at Stadium Mustard. Guys, if you don't have Stadium Mustard there, David or Dustin's got the shirt. If you don't have Stadium Mustard in your kitchen this season, you're doing it wrong. The iconic brand, the iconic taste, beloved from ballparks to backyards and everywhere in between. Stadium Mustard is a smooth brown mustard, rich in both taste and tradition. That's loved by millions. So be sure to head on over to stadiummustard.com to shop now. Yeah, you are not David. You are Dustin. I always struggle with that. You know, I'm always saying David, and then we get on the show. You're Dustin. I almost always struggle with that one.
It's all right.
Just rolls off the tongue. All right, let's have a little bit of fun before we turn it over to the tight ends. Let's do a snake draft. And we are going to kind of draft the perfect coaching staff. So we're gonna do head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, special teams, and then just like a hype guy. So I mean, somebody else that's on coaching staff that you just would want in your organization, maybe a motivation guy, somebody like that. So I'll turn it over to you. You can have the first overall pick, and you have your pick of the litter here to fill out this roster. Now, one thing to mention is you can pick anybody that is on a current coaching staff anywhere.
They have to be current.
They have to be current. So Belichick is not on the list here. So just to make mention of that, but you can use any offensive coordinator, any defensive coordinator, any head coach, and you can mix and match. If you want to put an offensive coordinator that's currently in the league at head coach, do it.
Okay.
And you have the first pick.
And we both make a choice in the snake draft, obviously. So
yeah, so you go first, and then I get 2 picks, and then you get 2 picks. Yeah. So you have 1 pick right here.
I'm gonna go Andy Reid.
All right, is your head coach?
As my head coach, Andy Reid, yes.
All right. So I get 2 picks here. And I'm going to go my offensive coordinator is going to be Kyle Shanahan.
Okay.
And my defensive coordinator, and I cannot express how much this pains me to do it, but I am going to take Mike Tomlin as my defensive coordinator. I mean, look, Browns fans, I know we don't like him, but he's good at what he does. He's a good leader. So I'm going to take him as my defensive coordinator. Your next 2 picks are
special teamer and locker room guy motivator. Is that right?
I mean, you need offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator,
right.
special teams, and hype.
So offensive coordinator. I know a lot about this guy. I'm going to go Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Okay.
And my defensive coordinator, I mean, this isn't even a homer, but one. But I mean, come on, I gotta go Schwartz, #1 defense in the league.
Yep, I'm on board with that. I think that's a good pick. And again, you can pick anybody that's on a current coaching staff. So keep in mind, you can use head coaches for anywhere on this list. All right, so I need a head coach, a special teams coordinator, and a hype guy. Special teams, I'm gonna go. Give me John Harbaugh here. Again, another rival within our division. And I could go head coach or hype. For my hype guy, for my rah-rah guy, give me Dan Campbell.
Damn it.
All right, and you need so your last 2 picks here, you can make your selection, special teams and hype.
And my special teams guy can be anybody though, right? All right.
Yeah, it can be anybody.
Boy, let's see. My special teams. Let me think about this. Special teams. I'm gonna go Shanahan here.
So I already used Kyle Shanahan. He's off the board.
Oh, did you? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, he's my offensive coordinator.
I'm going to use the coach for the Rams, McVay. I'm going to
Okay.
use him as my special teams guy and as my hype guy. And his name is escaping me, but the Miami Dolphins head coach,
All right, Mike McDaniel.
Mike McDaniels. That's a
All
good one,
right.
I think.
That is a
That's
good
pretty
one.
good. That's a pretty damn good coaching staff. I like that. That's pretty good.
Okay, well we'll let people vote on it here, but I've got to go with a head coach. So you know who actually comes to mind? And he was runner up for coach of the year is D'Amico Ryans, but give me the coach of the year, and I will take Kevin Stefanski as my head coach. So guys, here you can go ahead and vote on it here in the comments.
Yeah.
Who do you think has the better coaching staff? And I'm going to read it off to you. Dustin, his head coach is Andy Reid. Offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. Defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz. His special teams coordinator is Sean McVay. And his hype guy is Mike McDaniel. Allie Heisong here. She's got Kevin Stefanski as her head coach. Her offensive coordinator is Kyle Shanahan. Defensive, Mike Tomlin. Special teams, John Harbaugh. And hype guy, Dan Campbell. So make your selections
Pretty
there.
even. That's pretty evenly matched. That's pretty even, actually. Now that I've heard it out loud, both of them, it's pretty even, actually.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let the people decide. So I like doing this. Next week I want to do maybe we'll fill out snake draft style. We'll do like a whole offense or a whole defense. I like doing this kind of stuff. So everybody make your vote. Who's got the better coaching staff?
And soon, in a few weeks, we'll be talking free agency. It's right around the corner.
No, that's true. That's true. So far, a couple of winners for Allie. So thanks everybody. So make your selections here. Dustin, real quick, why don't you tell our listeners about the Barley Room or the Barley House? Excuse me.
Barley House, yeah, guys. If you haven't been, the Barley House is on West 6 in downtown Cleveland. It's a great place to enjoy during Browns games, but it's also an amazing place to go any time of the week. As you know, the last couple of weeks we did some shows from there live from the Barley House, but they have great food, great people, and soon I'll be able to put out there who won the $50 gift card from winning that from guessing the score. But I tell you what, it's a great place. They're great people, and by the way, it's a great place to support because it is in downtown Cleveland with the economy. And I got to tell you, just sidebar, downtown Cleveland is. I read an article, and you know I live in a historic building, but it is going to be several thousand apartments in the next 2 to 3 years, and others that have already come on board for downtown living in downtown Cleveland with these historic buildings that they're restoring, including the Rockefeller building and some of these other. It's pretty amazing what they've done with these historic buildings and saved them in downtown Cleveland, and and beautifying them to be what they originally were in their history. It's amazing that the city has saw the value of the history of these buildings because some of these buildings are just gorgeous downtown, these old buildings.
Oh yeah,
So.
definitely. Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. Okay, let's go ahead and turn it over to our position group breakdown. Before we do that, I want to tell you guys if you are looking to add to your home, whether it's maybe a new recliner, new couch, kitchen table, bed, whatever you need, your furniture needs, head on over to the Cleveland Furniture Company. Guys, they will save you money because they buy in bulk direct from the factories. They are a true family-owned and operated company, and they are here to save you money. So this next segment is brought to you from the couch.
From the Couch is brought to you by the Cleveland Furniture Company.
Okay, let's get into it. The past couple of weeks, we have done position group breakdowns. We did wide receivers, we did running backs, and let's go ahead with tight ends. I think last week we did tackles, didn't we? Or did I make that up?
You made that up.
I don't remember. All right, let's talk about tight ends. When we were talking about receivers, we kind of wanted to loop David Njoku into that category because he was truly your receiver number 2 on this team. He was just the go-to. He was kind of the safety net for whoever was at quarterback, whether it was Deshaun, PJ, DTR, Joe Flacco. It didn't matter who was taking a snap under center. David Njoku was kind of that go-to guy outside of Amari Cooper. And really, especially once Nick Chubb went down. You had to have it. He stepped up in a big way. He really had a breakout season. I mean, he had the best season of his career. So he had 81. So he was targeted 123 times, 81 receptions for 882 yards, 6 touchdowns. I mean, best season of his career. Now, he did have a weird span of, I don't know, 2-3 games where he really consistently battled some really bad drops. But also through the stretch of the season, really actually over the course of the season, made some insane catches that really just shadowed some of those inconsistencies. So that is something that you know that you're going to get with David Njoku, but he is truly kind of just a big-bodied receiver in a lot of ways. He's super athletic, but man, if you look at where he was his rookie season and the first couple seasons of his career, the steps that he has taken to get to where he is now to be that number 2 consistent threat in an offense that had 4 starting quarterbacks over the course of the season. So really good for him. You're going to have a couple of drops here and there, but you can rely on him to be very consistent in the blocking game and to really just be a safety net for who this offense wants to be. So I'll turn it over to you. Your thoughts on David Njoku in the season that he had?
Yeah, I mean, breakout season, obviously, for David Njoku. And even more importantly, I look back when you look at the folks like Gronk and Travis Kelce who kind of have battled it out until Gronk retired. I kind of feel like, we can put David Njoku in that conversation now as battling for that top 5 tight ends in the National Football League now consistently because of his play and his production now. I mean, I can see him going forward and really being that guy that competes for being, maybe top 3 or 4 tight ends in the league. I mean, I don't think that's crazy to say. But I mean, if you think about from his production standpoint, there's only a few above him this year, a handful of guys that did better than him, right? So when you look at it in that sense, you have to put him in that because you're right. He did have some weird, wonky games, but guess what? He also had burns all over his face and body. And, there were some things that he had to deal with that not normally people had to deal with this season. But overall, he was consistent. He was reliable. And you're right. He was that number 2 wide receiver because of the way the complexity of what happened with the wide receiver room and
Hey,
injuries.
Dustin, I don't know if you can hear me.
I
If
can hear
you
you.
can you hear me? Okay, I'm having some technical issues. Give me just a second. I've got to open
Sure.
up my laptop here. So keep going. If you see
Yeah.
my camera get a little funky here, I do apologize. Just give me 1 second.
No, you're good. And in regards to David Njoku, I mean, also we need to look, of course, at the next guys on the list, Harrison Bryant and Jordan Akins, right? Those 2 guys, we have to, as an organization, figure out what we're going to do from that standpoint. Are we going to draft? Are we going to look at other guys in free agency? Because after tight end number 1, specifically, in my opinion, there is somewhat of a drop off after that position. So I think we need to look at what the contracts look like for the other guys and what are the long-term plans for the Browns at tight end number 2 as the season goes on. So can you hear me over there, Allie?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where my camera went, but as we
I
wrap up
can
the show.
see. Yeah, I can see the camera though. I saw the camera the entire time, by the way.
Okay, I don't know what's happening, but we're just gonna roll with it. So I do apologize for the technical issues, but that's okay. So you mentioned Harrison Bryant, Dustin, and the player that he was this season. He was more of a utility guy, and the role that he played, he's really for where he was drafted and our expectations for him going into the season or going into his career rather. He thought he was going to be more that prototypical tight end that could really develop into an Austin Hooper replacement at that time, right?
Right.
Somebody that was going to be more like that. Now, he didn't really pan out to be that player, but he can do a lot of other things. He can be almost like a fullback. He can be almost
Right.
he's done quarterback sneaks. He can do a lot of those things, special teams, things like that. But as a strictly as a tight end, had a little bit of a down year this year. I just want to read you his stats for the first 3 years of his career. In 2020, he had 24 receptions for 238 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2021, 21 receptions for 233 yards, 3 touchdowns. 2022, 31 receptions for 239 yards, 1 touchdown. And then this year, he had 13 receptions for 81 and 3 touchdowns. So totally a different way of using him this season. Not necessarily a bad thing, but his usage, just totally went down. But again, you saw him in different roles. You saw him doing different things. But strictly as a tight end and what I think the Browns needed him to be, it was probably not what you would expect out of Harrison Bryant.
Right,
So,
and I think you brought up a good point based on where we drafted him and what the expectations were. It's kind of funny. Like the tight end one has kind of been a weird position for the Browns because we had big hopes for Hooper, right? And that just
Mhm.
didn't materialize, right? It just didn't. He was that big time free agent we thought was maybe seeing Njoku never in a Browns uniform, right? After Hooper got
Right.
so it's kind of been very interesting with the tight end position for the Browns, and it is such a big part of Kevin Stefanski's offense and the way he runs things. So it'll be interesting to see what the Browns do. Do they look via free agency?
Mhm.
Do guys get traded or released, or do they look in the draft and try to find somebody at value,
Yeah.
and not overspend, right? Maybe a fifth, sixth, seventh rounder. So
Yeah, because frankly, this isn't going to do it. I mean, your tight end room, this isn't going to cut it. Now, David Njoku, obviously a complete bright spot for the position. He's really blossomed into such a great player. But the depth in this room, it is not where you need it to be. I mean, you heard those stats. I mean, this season he had 13 receptions for 81. That's just not going to do it for what you need
right,
out of your tight end two. Now, tight end three, Jordan Akins, he also had statistically the worst year of his career, but the way that he was used was very, very odd. He had
I
15
agree.
receptions for 132 yards. Look, I know that he had that connection, that relationship with Deshaun Watson from Houston. They bring him to Cleveland. That didn't really develop into anything this year. You could kind of maybe blame it off of having four quarterbacks. Of course, that plays a role.
Sure.
But I mean, just used in a very nonchalant way. I think that the way it was very unintentional, in my opinion. I think he's a good player. I think you can certainly get more out of him. He's more valuable than the stats list here. But ultimately, I just think that you need more out of the tight end room. And before we go on to say what we think this room needs to be and what they need to do to go into next year, I want to turn it over to you for your letter grade on the tight ends this season.
C minus. I mean, obviously, David Njoku is the bright spot there, and that's why they get a passing grade barely. But I say C
Mhm.
minus. That's my grade.
Yeah, I think I'm a yes, I am with you. I'm gonna stay probably as a solid C to a C plus. And really the only reason is because of David Njoku. I think if you take him out of the equation or he's even any
Yeah,
worse than he was this year, you're really looking at almost a C minus to D type of room. But
right.
I'll give him a solid C personally. But you need more. I think you
Yeah,
need more out of this room. And you're right. I think that tight end it's a big area of need. You feel good with David Njoku, but that's about it. We certainly need somebody else in there. I wouldn't mind spending a relatively high draft asset on going and getting a young athletic tight end just for depth. And just to give them opposing defense is a different
yeah,
look.
that's true.
I don't think that when you saw Harrison Bryant out there, that didn't scare opposing defenses. I think you need just another
Right.
threat in the passing game that can also be a pretty good blocker as well. So
Yeah.
overall, not bad for the tight ends given the circumstances of the offense this year, but again, not what you necessarily need out of it. We are just going a quick other direction. Dustin, I want to talk about our newest partnership, and that is with the Hartville Marketplace and Flea Market. I know, Dustin, that you've spent some time there over the past couple of weekends, and we've got some exciting news to share. But head on down to Hartville, Ohio. I'm very familiar with it. Grew up going here. It's a lot of fun. They've got the indoor shops. They've got makers, bakers, and more all year round. So that is over 3 acres of indoor shopping with a lot of handmade crafted items. They've got produce, meat, cheese, coffee, anything you could possibly need. And then they also have the outdoor flea market, and that has been open since 1939. That's over 80 years of business. 12 acres of collector's paradise. So plenty going on there in Hartville. Dustin, I know you become very familiar with it over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm starting to figure out where your second home is because I feel like I've lived down there and I'm going down there again this weekend. But guys, if you look at our post, and Allie, if you want to make a comment, maybe just post something in the comments for people to go out and put this. We actually have a really cool, rare opportunity to give away 10 meet and greets. 10 meet and greets, and that's pretty phenomenal. 10 meet and greets to see MJ Emerson and uh, yeah, so MJ Emerson, and of course, that's going to be really a lot of fun. And then, of course, we also are going to have and I'm just trying to, this escaped me, but Elijah Moore is going to be there. So Elijah Moore and MJ Emerson are going to be live this weekend down in Cleveland or down in Hartville for that signing and the meet and greet. So go in there, tag somebody, follow us, follow Primetime Sports, and you'll be in to win one of those meet and greets with Elijah Moore and MJ Emerson both. And by the way, I know, Allie, you're a big fan of this person, but guess who also is going to be down there? The legendary kicker Phil Dawson is coming to town.
Ooh, nice.
He will be down there also doing autographs and meet and greets. So guess what? Last time I checked, it's only going to be 29 degrees in Cleveland on Saturday. You probably want to be indoors. I want to be indoors. I don't want to be outside. Come down to Hartville, enjoy it, check it out, and like you said, lots of other stuff you can do with the family down there other than the signings. Make a family day of it and go down to Hartville. It's less than an hour from Cleveland.
Yeah, there you go. It sounds like a pretty good day. Trust me, I've done it plenty of times, and it's a lot of fun. It's very family friendly. So be sure that you follow the post. That way you can partake in such activities. It's going to be a really good time. Also, we want to tell you about our friends over at Circle K. Here's a quick word from them.
Bounce fans, get ready for a sizzling sensation that's about to heat up your taste buds. Circle K is bringing you a hot deal this football season. Introducing Circle K's Hot Chicken Wings. And the best part, the price is as hot as the wings themselves. Pick up 6 wings for just $5.99 at your local Circle K today. So what are you waiting for? Gather your friends, your family, and anyone else who craves the ultimate wing experience. Circle K, where every deal is hotter than ever before. Here we go, brownies. Only at Circle K.
Dustin, I've got to ask, as we're just a couple of weeks away here, you getting excited about heading down to the Caribbean? Where's your head at?
Well, here's where my head is. I got a headache, okay? Because the two of you were saying, hey, we're getting our beach bodies ready, and I am partaking all the wonderful foods in Cleveland, like Angelo's Pizza and the barbecue here. And I'm like, man, I gotta not be a terrible person on this cruise. So I started my workout last night, and I got a little dehydrated, and I thought I'd drink enough water, and guess what? I did not. That's why I have a headache today. It's my own fault. But I'm starting to get excited about that. I'm getting more excited about just the warmth of 75, 80 degrees for 5 days and be able to partake. But more importantly, I'm excited to kind of hang out with the alumni. Full disclosure, I'm thinking that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be able to do some fun little segments and some cool stuff from the beach. Allie, have you signed up for any excursions yet? That was going to be my question.
No.
I was going to do that off air, but we can talk about that. But I just curious if I have not signed up for any excursions yet, so that was
No,
my
not yet.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what the week brings for David and I. But we're laying low. We're playing it cool. We've got a lot going this year, so we're
Yeah,
trying to play it
do you have,
safe.
do you have any big days this year that you have to like?
Yeah, just a couple, just
Okay.
a couple of really really big items so far this year. But
I,
you heard it. Well, go ahead.
oh, no, I was going to say also what I was going to tell you is um, you've been invited back to the golf tournament, right? Um, the one that you tried desperately to get to last
And
year,
it just did
and,
not work for me.
and the weather gods and playing gods hated you that day, and we all know that. But they said if David is such a decent golfer, he needs to come down with Allie. So David has gotten the invite as well. Uh,
Ooh,
so David, if you would
we
like
might.
to take your bride to be and join us down there, I think it's June 20 something. It's before the 4th of July weekend, and hang out with some alumni. So.
Yeah, pretty cool. Okay, well, you know what? Dustin and I, we both have headaches tonight, so we're going to wrap up a couple of moments early. I just wanted to remind you what we've got going on here in just a few weeks. Be sure to head on over to brownsfancruise.com to learn more and go ahead and book your room. Dustin, any closing thoughts as we wrap up on a beautiful Wednesday evening?
No, just a lot of exciting stuff to come ahead. Like I said, from Hartville and our new partner, we're going to be able to announce some really big, cool things that are happening the week after next. Nick Chubb, like we talked about, will be there. Tom Darden, and here's a little sneak peek for everybody. We're going to have Tom Darden, the Browns legend, on our show next week to talk about all things Browns and talk about him being down there to meet the fans. Next Saturday, not this Saturday, but the following Saturday. So some exciting things and some more exciting interviews to come in the future. Stay tuned, and we will always put you in the know and put you out there on the Facebook wall and let you
Yeah.
know.
We'll keep you posted. So be sure to follow us. Dustin's always putting stuff out there. So be sure to follow along. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. Stay safe, everybody. Stay healthy. And as always, Browns fans, go Browns.
Go Browns.